Welcome back to our second hour. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Congressman Joe Sestak on the line with us. sestak.house.gov, his website, and the congressman in his second term as a congressman from Pennsylvania, and if I have that right, the 7th District?
Right.
Okay, and quite a background. You've got a Ph.D. in political economy from the John F. Kennedy School of Management at Harvard, a Master in Public Administration, a Bachelor in American Political Systems. You graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. Oh, that was your father graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy.
No, he did, and so did I.
And so did you. Oh, yeah, there you go. So did you. I'm sorry, I'm looking at your bio here on the wiki. And I would think with regard to health care, given that your daughter Alexandra is an 8-year-old brain cancer survivor, this would be at the top of your agenda, fixing our health care system.
It's why I got into politics originally, to pay back this nation and TRICARE. And first, Thom, thanks for having me aboard.
You're welcome.
But it is why I got into this. I mean, I served 31 years in the military. I'd been to war, led a carry battle group in a war in Afghanistan. I'd actually been on the ground, the head of the Navy's anti-terrorism unit, been sent there for a short mission. But I got in for health care because when she was struck by this malignant brain tumor at the age of 4, and we worked our way through there, I was so fortunate to the taxpayers for giving me such a great opportunity for her to continue on and have quality and life.
This was because you say to the taxpayers because she was covered under your military benefits?
That is correct. Now, we go to war. I went 11.5-month war. My wife and my daughter were covered. We didn't worry about it. And that's why I'm fighting with President Obama that everyone needs to have health care.
Yeah.
We need to do it in an affordable way, but it has to be accessible to all. And that's the primary reason I got in. I'm opposed to the Iraq War. I was a Navy admiral, thought it was a tragic misadventure, but that was the primary reason.
Yeah, and so I'm assuming that you're going to be pushing for and voting for some sort of a public buy-in or a public option.
Absolutely. I think that ultimately competition discipline can best discipline costs, because I come from the federal government. I've watched a $1.2 billion destroyer get canceled this year because now the cost is $5.5 billion for that same destroyer. Yeah. However, I do believe that, as was been proposed by Senator Schumer and others, that a public option where, the subsidies or come from the premiums and copays of those involved will help that competition be won. And there has to be minimum standards. Every woman, mammogram exams, colon rectal exams, glaucoma exams, bone density exams, because early preventive care and management of that care reaps back less cost, and that's what's important also.
Right. Now, we're talking with Congressman Joe Sestak. The main reason I wanted to have you on is that you have pretty much declared that you're going to take on Senator Specter in the primary. Do I have that right?
That is right. I've made my personal decision to do so. My wife's very supportive, and we've worked our way through this after the Washington, D.C. political establishment said, hey, wait a minute, Pennsylvanians, here's your appointee.
Right.
We've anointed him, and I didn't think I'd be here 4 months ago. I just don't think that's right, nor do I believe that Arlen Specter is the individual to best carry us forward after this next election. I'm concerned he might be a flight risk, and we need new energy and new ideas for the future. So pending my final decision, believe it or not, with my 8-year-old, because I want her to know that Dad's going on another deployment around the state of Pennsylvania this time, not to a war. I will be in this race really next month.
How, sir, do you avoid becoming Ned Lamont?
In terms of the loss, well, it's interesting. First off, I think you have to run on the issues, not against them.
Well, actually, if I can back up a little bit and reframe that, do you think, because what happened with Ned Lamont, for our listeners who don't know what you and I are talking about right now, is he ran against Joe Lieberman, he won the Democratic primary, and therefore everybody assumed he'd become the U.S. Senator and from Connecticut. And then Lieberman decided to stay in the race as an independent and beat Lamont because now it was a three-way race. And do you think that Arlen Specter would do the same thing if you beat him in the primary?
He cannot.
Number one. And number two, if so, what do you do?
Pennsylvania has a no sore losers rule, where if you lose in the primary, you cannot then go in as an independent.
Ah.
Yes. And but what we do have is someone here who's voted 5 out of 7 times to privatize Social Security. I don't think people know about that about Arlen. He's voted for all the Bush tax cuts, 4 out of 5 times voting with this president. In short, he's voted for those not including the smokestack, gas smokestacks and oils and mercury regulations. You can go down a list of things, but most importantly, in this health care issue, he helped derail in the 1997 then Mrs. Clinton's health care plan, working for President Clinton, without providing an alternative. And so I think this should be a debate on ideas. Let's look in our wake and see where was he on most of the issues. It's sort of like Senator Reid said in his memoirs, he's always with us when we don't need him, and that's my concern. The President Obama is rightly, under his budget proposal, going to be retooling our economy and health reform for all. He's doing it for educational opportunity. He is actually going to make us more energy free of overseas oil supplies. Where will he be after 2010? Because every one of those issues is why I got into this race, not, as Arlen Specter did, to vote against the Higher Education Act, and where we had an opportunity before to raise the Pell Grants to $8,000. That's what my concern is. Will he be with us only when he needs to be, but not with us Pennsylvanians in the future?
Yeah, Arlen Specter. We're talking with Congressman Joe Sestak, who will be taking on Arlen Specter in the primary in Pennsylvania for the 2010 election. And Congressman, I'm curious, can you tell us stories of times when your constituents, as you as a member of Congress, when the voters in your district have been most successful in reaching out to you and lobbying to you and getting your attention, in perhaps even changing your mind or validating, your belief in a position, or even if they're the loyal opposition, getting you to take notice. And the reason I ask is because today we've got all our listeners calling in to their members of Congress about either single payer or a public option. We want an alternative to for-profit health care in the United States. And citizen activism is really the core of the history of this country. It is the history of this country. And I'm just curious what your personal experience as a member of the House of Representatives has been in, and what we might learn from that about how we all, the people listening and myself, how we can become more effective as citizen activists in lobbying, in trying to do what the healthcare industry is doing right now, going knocking on doors of Congress.
Let me tell you, and we'll take the example you're giving, those who want single payer. I think that what you're doing is absolutely the right thing to do. Let me just give you one example. There was I had a couple items going on simultaneously at the same time, but I made sure I went down to the hearing and sat there this morning for the issue of single payer, even though I'm not for single payer. But let me explain just a bit on that, because without a quorum, the Republican side was going to ask for a quorum, which they don't normally do, and close down the hearing so that no hearing could be held whatsoever. There's no way that we should not be listening. The way I've gone about it is pretty simple. I actually just about 6 weeks ago, about 8 weeks ago, met with a single payer group. I meet with them all the time and have over 3 years. At Swarthmore College, we then put together and a couple hundred people showed up. It was an all-day event. I wasn't there for all of it, but I came, I sat, I listened to those that wanted to have an input. And how has it moved me over the time? I was very much for public standards, that you have to emphasize that these private plans, the same that Congress members have access to, have to have a set of standards of mammograms, bone density exams, and all that. However, they've moved me to saying, wait a moment, at least let's have a public health care option. So people should not think that you cannot not move your representatives. Look, I had, and at other times, if you firmly believe in what you do, you need to be up and forthright about it. When I voted for, people called the first bailout back in September, I had over 4,000 emails and letters. 90% of them said, don't you dare vote for it. But I had written my first letter arguing for this with Mr. Bernanke and Mr. Paulson 8 months earlier than that, actually a year ago in March. And so at times you might not be moved because you need to take the heat then on that. But let me tell you, I listened long and hard to what they said, and they're the ones who convinced me that, yes, you can actually have better competition transparency. One of my goals, having come from the federal government and at times being concerned about government having overall to this public health care plan. And maybe that's not 100% what everybody out there would like to hear, but it did have an impact. I answer every letter on single payer. and,
so
and keep that open.
Are letters, physical letters to what, your local office or your federal office?
They all come into my federal office,
right
there on my website. Most of them are emails, and that's a good way of doing it. What we do is each day I am given, at the end of that day, how many letters, emails came in, and what topic were they for, and how did it break out? So I get a sense of people who care what they're thinking about.
Great. Congressman Joe Sestak, sestak.house.gov for more information. And good luck on taking on Arlen Specter, sir.
Thom, thanks. Change means change.
There you go. Well said. Thanks a lot for being with us today. Good talking with you. 866-987-TOM, our telephone number. We will be back.